The Nintendo Switch OLED model just got announced, but if you have a PS5, you're probably good to go. So one of the biggest rumors for what's to come from Nintendo is this mythical Switch Pro. We've been hearing all sorts of stuff about it, like a 7-inch OLED screen, better gaming that gives you up to 4K graphics, it's gonna use NVIDIA DLSS and all that, but now we have the official announcement and it's a little bit disappointing. So it turns out some of the leaks were actually right. We are getting a 7-inch OLED screen, which is going to be the overall same size as the current Nintendo Switch. It's just going to have much smaller bezels. We're getting new and improved Joy-Cons that come in black and white. We're getting a kickstand that's definitely a lot improved. It honestly looks a lot like the one you get on the Microsoft Surface. It's like the width of the whole device, and it looks like it's a little bit more rigid and sturdy than the one we have now, which you can flick off with your finger. We're getting a brand new dock with an LED light on it and a LAN port built in, which I actually think is really cool. But beyond that, it doesn't actually seem like we're getting too much more with this brand new Nintendo Switch. Now, the reason I'm saying it's kind of disappointing is that if you look at the website, all the fine print is there and it says it's capable of running games up to 1080p. So even when you have the dock plugged into the TV, and even though this is a new and improved dock with an LED light on it and a LAN port, it doesn't actually have 4K output, which is absolutely insane to me. Nintendo started off the trailer with Metroid Dread, and then we moved into Breath of the Wild 2, but then they started showing off some less graphically intensive games like the new Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remake, and they just kept going from there with new Smash stuff, and I was like, oh, we're definitely not going to get 4K output from this device. Now, if it is just a little bit better and is able to run games at a consistent frame rate or a consistent resolution, that's really all I want from the Switch at this point. Indie games are just fine. I'm playing Cyber Shadow right now, and that game looks and runs really cool, but then when you move into stuff like Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity and you're struggling to hit 30 frames per second, that's the stuff that they really need to figure out. The other reason I don't think we're getting that much of an improvement on this device is because it's only $50 more than the original Switch. Yeah, on October 8th, when this thing comes out, you're only gonna end up paying $349 for it, and it really feels like a $50 upgrade with what you're getting. I've seen on Twitter already that people are really holding out hope that there's yet another Switch Pro coming down the pipe that's going to have an improved dock or still have these DLSS 4K graphics that we've been hoping for so long. But yeah, I feel like this was Nintendo's shot to really prove to us that they've been working on something cool that's going to have 4K or at least solid 1080p, and it'll be able to compete with the Xbox Series X and PS5, but they showed this off and it doesn't look like it's doing any of that. And I really think if Nintendo doesn't figure out something fast, this is going to become a big problem for them very fast. I mean, we've seen games that are on the PS4 and Xbox One come to the Switch, right? Like Doom Eternal, Wolfenstein 2, and they run really, really bad compared to the other consoles. So as games get more advanced and we start seeing stuff that's only on next-gen consoles, that's the stuff that's not going to be able to run at all on the Nintendo Switch. I know this stuff ends up selling kind of well when it does come out on that console, but man, I've played Doom on the Switch. I've played Skyrim on the Switch, and Skyrim runs okay, but man, Doom does not run well at all. I think the moment we should have known that this wasn't going to be anything crazy was when we heard the rumor that it was still going to use the original Joy-Cons, because I feel like that sort of limits Nintendo and how much they can put into that Switch form factor. I don't want to give them too much credit here because there were better chips out when the Nintendo Switch was being developed, so the fact that they're not improving the chip at all, it seems, is a little disappointing, but man, I just don't know what Nintendo's strategy is here. I mean, like, who are you really pulling in? I think there's people who have an original Switch where maybe the battery's dying out a little bit and they need just a little bit more of an upgrade, and this new Switch with an OLED screen is kind of what they're looking for, but man, I feel like the enthusiast gamer that they really need to recapture with all of these awesome games that are coming to the console would have liked to see just a little bit more power out of the device. But hearing all this new news about an OLED Nintendo Switch really got me thinking about the PS5 and why Sony's leaving money on the table by not making a brand new PS Vita. Being able to run pretty much any game you want on the go and then be able to go home and dock it to your TV was always the coolest thing about the Switch, and the fact that Sony is not doing anything like that is killing me inside, because all of this stuff is what the PS Vita was literally made for. It was supposed to be console quality gaming on the go, and they got pretty damn close to it, but as I always say, it was ahead of its time. Like, in addition to this brand new Switch, we also know that Steam is working on something called the Steam Pal, which looks like it's going to be a portable PC version of the Nintendo Switch. It's going to have a screen in the middle, 2 controllers on the side, a touchpad so you can run the mouse, and then you can play literally any game you own in your Steam library on the go, and then when you get home, you can plug a USB-C cord into the port and output to your monitor. It's really like the ideal dream of playing on a console like that as someone who really loves handheld gaming. The double-edged sword with Sony is that they make literally the best games in the industry. Stuff like Ghost of Tsushima, stuff like Days Gone, stuff like Uncharted, The Last of Us. They have awesome stuff, and then it's just locked down for the most part to their console. Like, yeah, we did eventually get Days Gone and Horizon Zero Dawn on PC, but what? It took 4 years for Horizon and then a full year or two after Days Gone to finally get those games on computer, and they're still full-priced games. It's super annoying. If we had a handheld system in the PlayStation ecosystem that could play this stuff, it would be yet another way for Sony to just monetize and get people involved in their ecosystem. I just want to be able to play these games wherever I want. I loved having the Vita because we had Killzone Mercenary. It was a full-on Killzone game that I could take on the go, and it had a full suite of multiplayer options that people actually really liked and really committed time to. They totally screwed up Black Ops Declassified, but every time I bring it up on this channel, when for some reason I'm trying to talk about Black Ops Cold War and I can't get the Vita game out of my head, so many people are down in the comments saying, yeah, I love playing the bot mode. I still love the multiplayer in Black Ops Declassified, even though that game sucked. I remember Resistance Burning Skies. I spent a whole summer playing that game. The hardest 6 out of 10 FPS I've ever played because it was a handheld FPS that I could play deathmatch on with Insomniac's awesome weapons. Now, yeah, it didn't look as great, didn't run as great, and it wasn't really feeling like a full-on Resistance game, but it was still a ton of fun. I feel like the reason the Vita never caught on, other than the fact that the memory cards were super expensive and you absolutely needed them to play the console, is that when they were putting games like Killzone and like Uncharted on the console, they always felt like offshoots. They were never going to affect the larger series as a whole. They were side games that you didn't have to play to know what was going on in those franchises. The fact that we're finally achieving parity, where you have a handheld that can run the same games that you're running on your PC or your PS5 at home, that just opens all of the doors that the Vita was not able to open. If Sony can come out with the Vita 2 or a PSP3, they could even call it, that can play the same games we get at home with our saves transferred to that device, that is literally all I need to drop every other console, to drop my PC and just become a PlayStation gamer. Just imagine for a second what this PSP3 could be. You've got a 1080p OLED screen that looks absolutely incredible, just like the Vita 1 screen did back in the day. You've got the console quality controls, but you also have the resistive triggers and the haptic feedback you're getting on the DualSense. Like, that just makes sense because the vibration on the DualSense is pulled straight out of a smartphone, like an Apple product, and how cool all that stuff feels. The Nintendo Switch 1 had it with their HD Rumble, and I feel like Sony is doing a much better job with their version of that on the DualSense. So just transfer that stuff right over to a PSP3. You could have the PlayStation Network with PS Plus, and all of the games will actually just transfer onto that other device. You could have cloud saves that come with PS Plus that you can just download your saves right to this new PSP3. There's so many opportunities here for Sony to create this walled-off ecosystem and still own the whole console world. Like, when you look at the Switch, that thing can't handle voice chat without an app on your smartphone, and no game uses it because it's so stupid. You look at the Vita, which is almost 10 years old, you had full access to the PSN on that device. You could do party chats with PS4 players and it worked great. Since the Switch is the only focus Nintendo has and it's their only device, they kind of have a ceiling on how far they can go with games. Like, they have to use all of these weird technological features like DLSS to make their games look as good or as close to as good as something like a game on the PS5, and Sony just probably wouldn't have to do that. I have full faith that Sony could create a handheld that achieves close to parity with what you're getting on the home console, because again, you gotta remember, all they have to do is make the games look good on a 1080p screen. They don't have to worry about 4K, they don't have to worry about 8K, they don't have to worry about 1440p. If Sony is making a dedicated handheld, their games only have to look as good as the handheld's dedicated screen. Whereas Nintendo has to worry about how good their games look on the TV. And the whole reason I guarantee you they even got this new Switch into production is because so many people were complaining about how bad the Switch looks on a 4K TV. The fact that they made a console in 2017 that can't output in any way to 4K resolution is straight up embarrassing. I mean, something we've been talking about a lot is remote play and how that works on the PS5 and how you can play games on your PS5 on your iPhone or whatever. But can you imagine that if you wanted to go over to your friend's house or you were going on vacation and you had all of the games you were playing on your PS5 at home on this handheld device and it had HDMI HDMI output and it could connect to a DualSense controller with Bluetooth, you could have a literal portable PS5 that you could take out of your house on vacation and plug into a TV and play it like your PS5. And again, it's not gonna look nearly as good as your PS5 would, but if you're really into a game and you have to break up your play session because you're going away for a while, I've done this so many times. You come back and you just don't want to play it anymore. Having a handheld console could totally fix that problem. I know in a weird way this video might sound like I'm ragging on Sony and being a Nintendo fanboy, but the whole point of it is that I don't want to buy a new Nintendo Switch. I want Sony to give me a console to buy so that I can keep my trophies, I can keep my awesome games that Sony makes that Nintendo doesn't, and have a handheld on the go. But Sony isn't even giving me the opportunity, and that's a bummer. So let me know what you guys think about this new Switch and what you want out of the PS5P down in the comments below. And remember, if you want to stay PS ready, subscribe and set your notifications to all. As always guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.